Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really important Supreme Court case, Shivangi Bansal versus Sahib Bansal. Now, this isn't just another family dispute, it's a decision that's going to have some major ripple effects on family law all across India. So let's get right into it. So let's just start with the big question that's right at the heart of this entire case. Is Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, the law that's meant to protect women from cruelty, is it always used as the shield it was designed to be, or can it sometimes be turned into a weapon? This is the tough reality the court had to face head-on. And that brings us to Section 1. We're talking about a landmark case here. This is the Supreme Court stepping into the very complicated, often very painful world of matrimonial law with a judgment that really makes you stop and think.
At its core, what this case is really about is a fundamental tension in the law. See, this judgment isn't just about one couple. It's the Supreme Court trying to recalibrate the scales of justice to make sure that while we're protecting victims, we're also protecting innocent people from having the law used against them maliciously. It's a tricky balance.
So what actually happened here? How did this all start? In Section 2, we're going to break down the actual facts of the case and the huge legal questions that it threw up for the court to answer. The journey of this case, well, it follows a path that's sadly pretty familiar. It starts with a marriage, then disputes begin to surface. Things escalate, leading to serious allegations and a formal complaint under Section 498A. Now, here's the key part. They tried mediation multiple times, but it just didn't work. With no other option, this very personal conflict climbed all the way up the legal ladder to the highest court in the land. Once in court, the two sides were, as you can imagine, worlds apart. The petitioner, the wife, she pushed for legal action, arguing that what she alleged was true and these proceedings were absolutely necessary. On the other side, the respondent, the husband, he argued that this was a classic case of the law being misused, and that fundamentally the marriage was just broken. Completely, irretrievably broken, with no chance of fixing it. So this single case dropped some massive questions right onto the Supreme Court's lap. Questions that go way beyond just this one couple. They had to ask, was Section 498A actually misused here? Do we need to rethink the whole procedure for arrests under this law? When mediation completely fails, what is the court supposed to do? And maybe the biggest question of all, can the Supreme Court itself just step in and end a marriage? And that brings us to the moment we've been building up to, Section 3, the court's decision. Let's look at what the judges had to say and what they ultimately decided to do. This is the main event. The court's entire philosophy in this case can be boiled down to one incredibly powerful line from the judgment. The law must act as a shield for the innocent, not a sword for the vindictive. This single sentence, this idea that the law is for protection, not for revenge, it guided everything that came next. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, how can the court just decide to end a marriage like that? Well, the answer lies in a very special power they have, something called Article 142 of the Constitution. Think of it as the court's ultimate tool, its superpower, if you will. It lets them pass any order they think is necessary to do complete justice, to cut through all the red tape and deliver a final, fair outcome. So the final judgment came in 3 clear steps. First, they used that superpower, Article 142, and dissolved the marriage. Done. Second, they waived the usual mandatory cooling-off period, basically saying, let's not drag this out any longer. And third, and this part is a real game changer, they introduced new safeguards. They set up guidelines for something called family welfare committees, whose job is now to do a preliminary check before any arrest can be made, acting as a crucial filter to prevent the law from being misused. So why does this one case matter so much to everyone else? In this next section, we're going to explore the judgment's ripple effects. What does this mean for the future? Let's be absolutely clear about this. This decision is not a one-off. It sets a massive new legal precedent. It basically changes the rule book for how similar, messy matrimonial disputes are going to be handled from now on, all over the country. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, it means there's now a much stronger emphasis on a preliminary inquiry before anyone gets arrested in a 498A case. It gives real teeth to these family welfare committees, making them a first stop for fact-checking. And it sends a clear signal that the courts can and will step in to end a marriage that is obviously beyond repair, to stop people from being trapped in years and years of miserable litigation.
All right, for all you law students and young lawyers watching, listen up. This next section is for you. What are the key lessons, the core legal principles that you absolutely have to take away from this case?
But before we get to the list, let's quickly talk about a key legal term, ratio decidendi. I know it's fancy Latin, but it's simple really. It's the core legal reasoning, the why behind a court's decision. It's the part of the judgment that is legally binding on all other courts. Understanding the ratio is how you understand why this case is such a big deal.
Okay, so what should you be jotting down? First, this case is a perfect textbook example of Article 142 being used to achieve complete justice. Second, it hammers home the importance of procedural safeguards, how you have to balance a person's rights with checks and balances. Third, it's a great illustration of how law evolves, with the court adapting its reading of Section 498A to match today's social reality. And finally, you can see this as a case study in judicial activism, where the court steps in to create new guidelines where none existed before. And all of this leaves us with one final big question to chew on. The Supreme Court was aiming for balance, but is this judgment a clear step in the right direction? Or does it maybe create new challenges for people who are genuine victims? It's a huge step for sure, but the conversation about finding that perfect balance in family law, well, that is far from over.